What's up, guys? Welcome into a brand new episode of Chargers Weekly. As always, joined by Matt Money Smith. Fresh off a groundbreaking ceremony in El Segundo, Money. I wasn't able to attend, but it looked awesome, and it's just a new era of Chargers football.
Yeah, you know, when you roll up there, and you know, I was fortunate that the Chargers asked me to sort of MC it, and you get old Mayor Chris Pimentel out there, and the guy that's running the whole show from whatever construction it is. Geez, now I'm already blanking on his name. Robert's his first name, but I don't want to call him Robert. Seemed like he had a much more formal title than that. Dean Spanos was there, obviously, and spoke, and Justin Derwin all out. It was a heck of a celebration. A lot of folks. Jeannie Buss, Linda Rambis came out. Luke Robitaille came out. Of course, they're just right up the block from the Kings facility, right up the block from the Lakers facility. And sort of my theme was, as I, just kind of opened the ceremony, I've been covering sports here for 26 years and I've spent a lot of time in El Segundo. When they opened Hell South, as it was called, in 99 for the Lakers, you had those back-to-back titles that immediately followed, and we're at practice every day in El Segundo. And then the Kings kind of get on their little mini roll there. It wasn't Stanley Cup run, but with the Deader, Lappy kind of crew, and they knock off the Red Wings in the playoffs. And so El Segundo was kind of a spot, where things happened, and now it still is. And to kind of have, I think, that support, and to see Jeannie there, and to see Luke Robitaille there, and just sort of the connection between the professional franchises here in town was really neat. And the other thing that stood out to me, Chris, was just proximity, and to have what I believe is logistical advantage. We've traveled with the team, they're in Costa Mesa, and when you're going up to LAX, sometimes the 405 is not being too kind to you, and you can sit on that bus.
I'm smiling because it's logistics off the rip, baby.
Yeah, right.
I love it.
So I just think about, players sitting on the bus for an hour, sometimes, hour and a half if traffic's really bad, even though we got the police escort, nothing you can do. This is a mile away. I mean, you shoot straight up Nash and you're at the Atlantic terminal, and or Sepulveda and you're at the Atlantic terminal. So logistically, 7 miles, I think it is, from SoFi, 3 from LAX. And it's just it is a giant parcel of land. I mean, it is 3 full football fields and a state-of-the-art training facility that's going to be built there, and is going to be with these Chargers probably be for, I don't know, at least a quarter century, 3 decades.
Yeah, it's a big deal. And to your point with El Segundo, man, the Lakers, I worked for the Lakers for 9 years. Grand Avenue, Nash, where the Kings and Lakers have their facility. Just to have that association with those teams, be up closer to Inglewood, closer to SoFi. Orange County is beautiful. Don't get me wrong, but I don't think players will mind living in the South Bay, maybe in Hermosa, Manhattan Beach. But you're right. Getting to LAX is like 5 minutes. So logistically, if you get on the road, you hop on what is it, Century or whatever, and you're there in like 2 minutes.
Yeah, it's plane, just straight up. You'll pull out of Hughes Way and you'll head up Sepulveda and you'll be at LAX. I mean, you're there. It's that easy when you can. Plus, look, I know this isn't the most sizzle, of conversations, but you come home and you land at LAX at 2 a.m. because so many of our games are on the East Coast, and, it's a long flight back. It's tough playing football on the West Coast. It's a heck of a lot tougher than playing in the Midwest or on the Eastern Seaboard. Those teams have so many short trips, 40 minutes from New York to, 25, 30 minutes on a flight from New York to Philly, to DC, to Buffalo, Chicago. You're centralized. For the West Coast, you wear it. And it's why when you look at the travel for all these teams year in and year out, it's either the Seahawks, the Rams, the 49ers, or the Chargers that end up with the most miles traveled year in and year out. So to have a bus trip after you land at 2 a.m. back to a facility that's 2 minutes away instead of 45 minutes away before you get in your car and you can head home when you're putting head to pillow at 4 a.m. Now, you get an extra hour, I think, that you end up saving. And that's going to help a lot. I think, we've learned so much about, sort of taking care of your body and what rest does for you and things like that this is a big upgrade. You said it. I love Orange County. That I've lived here for 22 years. I love this part of the greater Los Angeles area, and certainly would never leave it. But for the Chargers, this makes a ton of sense.
Yeah, I asked for questions. One of the questions, and I don't know if you know this or not, will the Chargers be able to have training camp there? I know we're a couple years out, but
That's the plan.
it's big enough for sure, right?
That's the plan. They, in terms, I think they're talking about close to 400 parking spots. And the way they talked about doing the field for training camp, it would be fan accessible. They'd be able to build bleachers in there. They have plenty of parking where they would be able to accommodate fans coming in. So I think that is the plan. Yeah, training camp will be held on site in El Segundo.
There you go. And like I said, it's a great place for fans to come out. You got the beach there, go to training. You can do everything in an afternoon, Muddy. Go to practice and then hit up Manhattan Beach and
there you
go to Simsey's and call it a day.
Surf El Porto and get your ass kicked and have a great time. Surf S pipe if it's January and, maybe contract something that you don't want. I'll say this though, living in very close proximity to the beach and El Segundo is no different. You'll be talking about some early morning practices out there because, the wind gets whipping. So in the afternoon, that wind, like yesterday, everybody out there was like, oh, I didn't realize it got this windy. It's like, oh yeah, it's 3:30 and the wind gets whipping in the afternoon.
You get that marine layer in the morning too.
Exactly.
You don't have the sun. It'll be fine.
Great.
It'll be good. Get used to some morning practices. Hey, last week was awesome. We had a great podcast breaking down the schedule. I think you guys liked it and we appreciate the feedback. One of the things that they asked us, Buddy, and we just didn't have an opportunity to do it because we taped the podcast before the schedule came out.
Right.
They're like, why didn't you break down the anime schedule release? And I felt terrible. I'm like, listen, it's not like we ignored it. Believe me, if we would have seen it, we would have talked about it.
We had access to the schedule before all you fools had it. So we were able to knock it out and get that thing fired off the second it was released. And yes, they had the anime embargoed. They would not let us see it because they knew how darned excited I'd have been. And I can't keep my mouth shut. I got loose lips. There's nothing I would have been able, if you haven't seen it, I'm sure you have if you're listening to this podcast, but if you haven't seen it 20 times, you've likely missed something because there are so many little nuggets in there. And props to the Chargers for signing off on it and throwing shade at all their opponents. Nobody was safe. Everybody except for
nobody was safe.
I think the Texans. I still have not. I didn't find anything on the Texans anime.
What about the Dolphins? The Dolphins seem pretty.
Yeah, I think you're just kind of you're riding the Dolphin. I guess that's there was nothing subtle. There were no subtle digs there. So, but outside of that, there's plenty. Family trust respect. That's my favorite. Family trust respect is my favorite moving forward.
There's no rivalry. There's no rivalry between the Jags and Chargers that I know of, but that was my favorite slide.
Incredible.
We'll leave it at that. The subtlety of that one, we know who was underneath that Jaguar mask, right? But the TVs had Phillips' 90-yard touchdown when he's yelling at Yannick Ngakoue from years ago. I mean, those are the subtleties in each slide. It was incredible.
It was great. I'm glad everybody was entertained by it. I say it repeatedly. I'll say it again. It's the best social media team in all of sports, not football, all of sports. And it's not, Jason and Megan and everybody that Andrew, who obviously had a big part of that, who contributed to it. Just what a heck of a job.
Yeah, it was awesome. All right, let's push it forward. And lost in, I think, the schedule release, Buddy, were some pretty big signings for the Chargers on defense in Bryce Callahan and Kyle Van Noy. And, I'm looking at what this defense looks like right now. It's a completely different operation, man. It is a completely different unit. There's a mix of some guys who were here last year when we talk about the elite players in Derwin James and Joey Bosa. And, I think we're all hoping Kenneth Murray takes that leap in year 3. A few other guys in Asante Samuel Jr., Michael Davis, Nas Adderley. But Brandon Staley made a concerted effort to get guys who he knows and who knows his system. Kyle Van Noy, the exception, but a veteran who brings some versatility. Just your thoughts on those two guys specifically and just how remade this unit is right now.
Yeah, I'll start with Kyle. I do this thing with NFL Network called Broadcast Boot Camp, and it's all the football players, some former, some current, that are interested in getting into the media. And Kyle was there this year, and so I do the radio play-by-play, and they sit down and they they play the role of analyst, and you kind of talk them through, how you become a radio analyst and what the mechanics are of that. And Kyle was one of them. And I'll tell you, man, there's a couple, like Cam Hayward was another. And there's a few people that when they're next to you, you just see the size and like the way that Kyle's built, just the heaviness of his hands, the thickness that he carries. He is that's a physical player right there. When you see the measurables and it's 6'3", 250, it's like, oh, a 250 edge, and it's like, nah, this guy is a brick, what. And look, at 31, you go through his statistical measures year in and year out. It was weird that Miami got rid of him. That was such a strength because he had a heck of a year for the Dolphins. I got it pulled up here.
They paid him a lot of money, right?
They paid him a bunch of money, but he had 6 sacks. He had a bunch of quarterback hits. He had a couple forced fumbles. Last year in New England, he has another 5 sacks. 3 years ago, 6.5 sacks. Like the guy is always in that, 3.5 to 7 sack range. And he's just a game wrecker, man. The guy is, so that's I'll just start with that one because, and then we do the big picture of, hey, I need guys that know the system that I can run and feel like, we can run effectively. And so that brings you to Callahan, who was with him in Chicago and Denver. We already talked about Sebastian Joseph Day and now Morgan Fox, and these are important signings. And I bring it up because they're not going to be listed number one. Kyle Van Noy is not going to start ahead of Joey Bosa or Khalil Mack on the edge. But when those guys are getting a breather, and we know sometimes Joey will take an entire series off, and I'm sure they're going to want to do that with Khalil as well. I mean, that he's on the other side of 30 now. So to be able to plug in a Kyle Van Noy, and now, Chris Rumpf can perhaps be even more fresh. And instead of getting 3 or 4 series, he gets 1 or 2, and he's incredibly fresh for those. Like that's what they're doing now. They're getting value depth signings on that interior line. If you feel comfortable about all those players and you can run them in waves and you can constantly rotate in the Gazianos, the Morgan Fox, with Johnson, with Joseph Day, with Forrest Merrill, with Jerry Tillery, like freshness is important, man. Depth is super important, especially as the season wears on. So I think, that's kind of what you're seeing now are these depth signings and players that Brandon Staley knows have succeeded in his scheme and for him as a coach.
I think the biggest difference going into 2022 versus last season, was there one guy on defense that was in Brandon Staley's system before last year that played for the Chargers? I can't think. I'm thinking of Vic. I guess Chris Harris. Yeah, Chris Harris was with Fangio. Chris Harris technically, but he was with Fangio. He wasn't really under Staley.
Yeah, I think it's more the Fangio system. I think that's the foundation. It's kind of like Sean McVay is. Yeah, it's Sean McVay, no doubt, but it's really, Kyle Shanahan, which is really Mike Shanahan. It's really that, which is really Gary Kubiak, right? Like it's, that stuff you can get lost in that maze. And I mean, heck, we can go all the way back to Air Coryell when it comes to throwing the thing around and trace it all the way back to there. So, but yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah, I don't think Chris played. Yeah, I think Chris definitely played with Brandon. I mean, he was, the outside linebackers coach.
Outside linebackers. But I guess my point is okay, everybody returning has 1 year under Brandon Staley.
That's a great point.
The guys that he brought in, Morgan Fox, Rams, had 6 sacks under Staley, hit his career high. Troy Reeder, Rams. Sebastian Joseph Day, Rams. Khalil Mack, we know that relationship. Bryce Callahan, you mentioned Bears and Broncos with Bryce Callahan. So the guys that they've brought in know Brandon Staley's system, and some of them have intimate knowledge of it because he was their defensive coordinator with the Rams. So I just feel like there's a great deal of familiarity this year as opposed to last year, where you have guys that either A, maybe weren't the right fit for what he wanted to accomplish, or B, just didn't know it and it took time to learn it. So, this complete revamp / having a year under your belt, I think is a big deal for this defense.
Well, I think the comments from Asante Samuel I don't know if it was earlier last week or if it was 2 weeks ago. I don't think we brought him up. But, when he had his media day and he was asked, what the difference between last year and this year. And I mean, he didn't even hesitate. He's like, it's not even close. He's like, last year, all I thought about was, where am I supposed to be? And am I in the right place? I think I'm in the right place. I'm not sure, but I think I am. He goes, now? He goes, I'm looking around the defense and I'm like, oh, okay, I'm here. Hey, he's there. So you know what? He might go here, which means if he does, then I'm going to move here. He's like, I am on the 3 levels ahead. I'm thinking about different scenarios inside of each play and what I'm going to do based on what these other people around me are doing. Last year was just what is my single assignment and can I execute it? So to have that sort of familiarity, look, we know, and it's one of the reasons why football's, the number one sport in America, because it's chess, it's 11 pieces moving in concert and trying to maximize their movements together to make a play successful. Basketball can be a 1-on-5 or a 1-on-3 or a 3-on-1 endeavor where other members aren't even involved in a play. We know for the most part, baseball is a 1-versus-1 batter versus pitcher until the ball's put into play. And then it might involve 1 or 2 others, but football's 22. I mean, it is 22 people that are involved in the execution of a play. And man, when you're trying to learn a new system and one you've never played in before and one that is as complicated as the one that Brandon Staley runs, it can be tough. Now, I think the one thing to point to is, look, when he came in and took over for Wade Phillips, the Rams got it right away. I mean, clearly. And I think that maybe speaks to what you're alluding to, which is, they just had the personnel that worked out for the gap and a half that he wanted to play up front. The corners to be able to play, either man or zone press or just kind of run quarters like he likes to run a lot of. So I think now that he's able to play, okay, I need guys that can play this way. They couldn't do it last year just because of the financial situation and just the way that the team was built, by the time he arrived. So it's a different team, man. It's a way different team on defense, especially.
Yeah, that was a Gus Bradley personnel.
Yeah, 4-3
for years,
cover 3
for years.
Gus is going to play it in Indianapolis. It's that he has never changed. Played it in Las Vegas last year. You're absolutely right. Could not be more. I shouldn't say could not be more different. Still defense, but it's a lot different. A lot different with what you're asked.
And somebody like Michael Davis, who was groomed by Ron Miles and kind of worked his way up and learned to play a specific way, there's going to be a natural adjustment. So just to have a year under his belt, I hope that he gets even more confidence in 2022. But, I want to give Popper credit because he tweeted those guys and basically saying that all 3 levels of defense, there's familiarity in the scheme with guys that they brought in. So I think that's cool. I got some questions too, Money. I wanted to run a few by you. With all the additions on the D-line, is any of the few returning players' jobs really safe? And I guess not. I mean, I think
that's a good question.
You spoke to it. It's a very healthy rotation. And I think you have a lot of fresh bodies. But when you bring in Sebastian Joseph Day and Austin Johnson, I assume those guys are going to play quite a bit.
Those guys will start. They'll play the majority of the snaps. And I think Tillery will start. I think he's going to get a crack at it, even though they didn't pick up his 5th-year option. And certainly his future is in question with the team. I think he shows enough flashes. But the second there's a slip up, that's the difference, is now if it's not Jerry, it can be, Fehoko, who I thought played great last year, Christian Covington, who was re-signed, who had great moments, last year. I feel about Forrest Merrill, about Morgan Fox, about, coming in. So, yeah, I think it's less, I think the snaps are less important, as weird as that sounds, because it just feels different with the depth that they have. I think, like you mentioned what Popper alluded to, that all the guys they brought in have experience at each level. Well, so do the guys that played last year. I mean, that's the thing, is like all of these guys now have a year of experience. Yeah. Gaziano and Merrill and Fehoko and Covington and Tillery, they all now have. The only one that doesn't really in that whole group is Abonia, the rookie, Tito. So, but it wouldn't surprise me if he worked his way in there. I mean, as well as he played for UCLA.
Another point about the rookie class, the DB battles are going to be fierce, man. Like they're bringing DBs in. Like it's not just Callahan and JC Jackson, guys who are going to start. I mean, they brought in a lot of young DBs that I think are going to be hungry and going to push some of these guys. Mark Webb's another guy from last year who got hurt, who I think is going to be in the mix.
Yeah. And I think, so much of that, and we've heard Coach Staley talk about it repeatedly, it's going to be interesting to see which of those guys ends up making it. Only 53 can make it. They're not all going to make it. Some are going to be practice squad guys, especially with how wide, the practice squad roster is now. But he likes DBs on special teams. That's what he is all about. He believes they are the best special teams players. So to me, that's kind of where, because they had a number of picks, there was multiple picks in the 6th and the 7th. So I think that's where you're going to see the Jasir Taylors, the Dean Leonards, those players. They're going to be battling for those final spots. I think less in the defensive back rotation and a little bit more in the special teams impact that they can make, and I think that goes with, a lot of those. We talked about Troy Reader. Is he going to play snaps? Yeah, absolutely. But he's going to probably be a core 4 special teams guy, and he's going to be expected to be one of the best special teams players. I think that's where Xander Horvath is going to make the team, if he's going to make the team, is their last pick in the draft late in that 7th round. If he makes it, it's because he's going to be another one of those great special teams players. That's going to be a battle to keep an eye on too, I think, between he and Gabe Neighbors, because they're not going to carry 2 fullbacks. It's going to be one of those 2, I think. So that's going to be one to keep an eye on. You mentioned, Mark Webb, who's, I think, probably going to slide behind JT Woods. I really get excited about what he brings in terms of getting a lot of snaps and playing those 2 high with Nas, and his ability to cover and just kind of keep the top on of a defense, and allowing Derwin to move around a lot more. We talked about that last week or the week before, following the draft. So all those I think are interesting. Louie Gilman, who's, kind of, what's his future? Again, he's certainly had great flashes and moments, but is he going to be pushed out by Webb or Woods? And, some of the players that made it as undrafted free agents a couple of years ago, Kamon Hall, the Devon Campbells, like, what is their future? It's a great problem. It's a great problem to have, because last year was a problem, and I think we saw it. We saw it in, what game was it, Chris? That was the home game. It was the Chiefs game on Thursday night. When Tavon had to come in, and immediately Patrick Mahomes is like, there he is, let's go get him. And they picked on him. They picked on him all game long. And same with Kamon Hall. I think it was Kamon Hall that was out there. It was Tavon and somebody else. I can't remember who, but they had both backup corners in, and it's kind of when it started slipping away from them.
Yeah, that was the game where Derwin tried to go, couldn't go.
Yeah, exactly. That's what it was. Yeah, it was Mark Webb and Tavon that got burned on the Travis Kelce overtime touchdown play.
So for fans, training camp in preseason, like the battle in the secondary, like I can't wait to watch JT Woods in the preseason. Like it's some of these young guys going against the Cowboys and the Saints, and I think it's the Rams.
Saints on the road, Rams, Cowboys, and they'll do joint practices with the Cowboys. So no doubt. Fun too. Yeah, I mean, come on. OCC is going to be crazy when the Cowboys are there for joint practices for those that don't make the trip up to Oxnard. So that's going to be a heck of a lot of fun. It was fun with the 49ers. It's always fun, Saints, 49ers, Saints. All the players, all the teams we've had out, but having the Cowboys is going to be pretty darn special.
At British Bolt, who on the team needs to take the greatest leap forward this year? And subsequently, who do you think will take that leap?
All right, let me think. Well, I'll start defensively, and I'll go as well as he played last year. I think it's Asante. I think you feel really good about JC Jackson. I think you talked about, Mike Davis was up and down. And I think, if you can get that third corner settled, the second, if Asante is going to play outside and can play outside, to have he and JC, that's phenomenal. So like, that's one. I'm still waiting for Kenneth Murray, just because I know it's there.
That was mine.
Yeah. Sorry. I took it from you. So I know it's there. We just haven't seen it yet. That's one. I think, I'll give you multiple ones. I think Jerry Tillery, or he's not going to be on this team. He's shown flashes, and flashes are great because it's in there. It's just consistency. And I think for Jerry, it's, not just being an up the field interior defensive lineman, but you've got to be able to stop the run. You've got to be able to identify where your gap is and fill that gap. And that's been a bit of a struggle for him. And as big as he is, as long as he is, he ought to be really good at it. So I'd love to see a jump from on defense. On offense, I think, Josh Palmer, right? We talked about who's that third receiver. And I think between Palmer and Guyton, you would just love to see a little bit of progression there.
I think for everybody clamoring for a receiver in the first round, Josh Palmer may have something for you in 2022. The way he closed the year and the way that Justin, frankly, found him towards the end of the year too. I think this is an offensive, a set of offensive weapons for Justin that he's going to find anybody who's open, man. And there was a question about the tight ends too, about the fact that maybe there's a little bit more speed with Parham and Gerald Everett, if Justin will look more to the tight end this year. And I think it's certainly a possibility. But if you take the tight ends out of it and you say, okay, we got Keenan, Mike, Josh, Jalen as the deep threat, and Austin coming out of the backfield, I mean, there's like 6 or 7 guys that Justin will not be afraid to throw the football to.
Yeah, you mentioned Palmer, and it's like, look, one of the great things about Justin Herbert, and it's not the case with a lot of quarterbacks. They find their comfort zone and their security blanket, and that's where they're going. Just doesn't care, unless you prove him wrong.
Does not care.
4th and 21. Who caught it? Josh Palmer. Doesn't care. If you're open, you're going to get the ball. So I think to me, I think maybe it spoke a little bit to Jared Cook's age, last year. But yeah, to have some athletes at that, because we saw it, right? We saw it 2 years ago. At the tight end position, everybody ate, everybody, Hunter Henry, Donald Parham, Steven Anderson, like everybody has some action. So there you go. There's another name, Trey McKitty, to see him maybe blossom into more of a full service, pass catching tight end, because he's the best blocking.
It's there, right? It's there.
Yeah. I mean, he's incredible. He didn't get a lot of passes thrown the way that, that Kirby ran his offense in Georgia. It was take care of the ball. My defense is going to win us games. So there wasn't a lot of opportunities for him, but he's a heck of a blocker. And if you can get yourself a full service tight end that's, tied in, that's just getting that Y, that'd be huge. That would be huge. But I'm anxious to see. I think with Gerald Everett, you got a little bit more. You got not a little bit. You got a lot more athleticism. Jump up there from Jared Cook, who's had a heck of a career. But I do think there were some drop issues with Jared last year. I do think there might have been a little bit of trust, sort of things, or just not feeling like we're entirely on the same page with Jared last year. So to have Gerald instead of Jared, hopefully, like you said, we'll see some of that tight end production. Because remember how. Hunter, I'm trying to remember if it was one or the other. I want to say Hunter had a lot of touchdown action, but did not have a lot of third down action 2 years ago when Justin was a rookie. It was one of those two. I can't remember. So I'm anxious to kind of like, just building on what you were saying there, seeing that. Yeah, go ahead.
Gerald's younger and he's ascending. I mean, each year he's gotten better and better and better. He had an uneven quarterback situation last year with Russell Wilson being hurt and then Geno Smith. And then Goff kind of relied on Higbee, I think, more than ever during those first few years. But I'm 100% with you. Like, Justin does not care if Gerald Everett's open. Gerald Everett could have a Pro Bowl type season if Justin continues to find them. So I think that's another guy that, just some of these underrated signings money. Like I talked about it yesterday. We did a piece on Deandre Carter. I think that he's such an underrated signing and kind of gets lost in the Khalil Macks and the JC Jacksons. I mean, this guy was one of the best return specialists in the NFL last year, and he's got some juice as a receiver. I mean, he caught quite a few balls and had 3 touchdowns on offense for the now Commanders. So I'm not saying he's going to get a lot of run at receiver, but he's a potential option as like a wide receiver 5 if let's say you want to keep 4 and kind of lean on Carter.
Yeah, or like we saw with Andre Roberts last year, some of those creative jet sweeps, motion, things like that he can be used for. But look, I think for Carter, even if he doesn't do a lick on offense, we saw the difference when Roberts rolled in on special teams. I mean, how much different this team was once he got back there and started returning kicks and could set the tone, and just the juice it gives an offense when they're jogging on the field, on the plus side, because he's had a 45-yard kickoff return or a 60-yard punt return, or so even if he doesn't score, there's just, man, it just juices up the offense so much. So that, and hopefully J.K. Scott's the answer, at punter, because I think that's, with all this talent that we've listed on defense, to be able to win the field position battle, pin some teams deep. When you got Bosa and Matt coming off the edges, that's how you create serious issues for offenses. They're pinned deep. They're trying to be conservative because they're so far in their own, on their own end of the field. And next thing you know, you got a 3rd and 8 and you got Bosa and Mack flying off the edges. That's how you tilt games. It's an old cliche, but right. It's the old game of inches. The margins are slim. And so to have, an advantage on special teams, with Carter now coming in as the returner, Scott as the punter, then that's, I think that's something that needs to be acknowledged as well.
Yeah, and these are all the things we're talking about. I mean, this team was 9-8 last year, should have been in the playoffs. You improve the special teams, you improve field position, you get guys in that know the system on defense, you stop the run a little bit better. I mean, 9 wins becomes 11 wins pretty quickly. So these are the things that the team's trying to address. A lot of questions, Monty, about this right tackle solution. And somebody says Pip, a solid depth piece, but doesn't see him as a starter. I think that that's where they're going to go. We talked about this a couple of weeks ago, right?
It's going to be a full-on competition. It's it. That's it. It's as it stands right now. I don't see anyone else out there, that, I guess you can continue to just sort of wait it out, see if you can get a veteran minimum. I can't remember I'm trying to think of who's out there. There's somebody out there that, Fisher's out there.
Yeah, Fisher's out there.
Who was coming off, but he's played solely left his entire career. So I don't know if he's interested in flipping to right at, however old he is, 33 or something. But I think you're talking about, Storm versus Pip, because Salyer's going to be a guard. They've already talked about that with his, sort of the way he moves and, maybe some of the issues they're concerned about with his feet at the tackle position at this level. But, he's proved people wrong. I played in the SEC, had to play Alabama, twice and seemed to do all right there. But that to me is probably what it is. It's a Pipkins versus Norton. And look, when you can help, when you've got Slater on the other side, it's much, and you have and you have it locked down inside with, Johnson, Lindsley, and Filer, then you can help. You can just plant McKitty over there, running back, pass pro. We know how good Austin is on that front. So you can help out one tackle position. It's much easier to help out a tackle than it is a guard if you got a turnstile. And I think that's why they're more interested in keeping Filer there, at left guard. Just, that's a strength of this team. Why would you break it up? They feel great about Zion at right guard. So you got 4/5 of the line that you feel really, really good about. If the right tackle's the question mark, just shade your help there. You got a lot of tight end help and you got some running back pass pro over there.
It's May 19th too. I mean, I remember a month ago, what are we going to do at returner? We don't have a returner. You get Deandre Carter. So it's not over. That third wave of free agency is pretty long, and you never know what's going to happen in training camp. You pick up guys last minute and they make a big impact. I know
there's somebody out there. Oh, Dwayne Brown's out there. I'm just going through them now.
Yeah.
I was like, so yeah, let's just say these guys are holding out for a bigger deal. And you just offer them the veteran minimum, and they feel like, if I can go play tackle on an offense that's going to be one of the top 5 offenses in the league, and I can protect Justin Herbert, maybe I get a bigger contract next year, so I'll come in and take the minimum. Yeah, so there's Dwayne Brown, again, another left tackle. We already talked. Riley Reif, that's who I was thinking of. Reif is out there who got hurt last year, but he's a career right tackle, so that may be one to keep an eye on.
I mean, Melvin Ingram just signed with the Dolphins like 2 days ago, and he'll probably make an impact in Miami. Hey, this is an interesting question from Beckham Browning. What or who do the Chargers need to change the culture on balance? They have one of the best rosters, a coach going for broke, yet people naturally have more faith in the Broncos because of their intangible culture / franchise. I'd argue that the culture has shifted the last couple of years. And, when you have a team that buys into what Coach Staley's doing in his second year, I don't think it matters what the Broncos did in the mid 2010s or 1999, 2000.
I would just roundly disagree with that. Just because of Derwin and Justin. I think when you talk about both sides of the ball, you've got a leader that the players on this team are ready to follow them into battle. That's how you establish culture. Number one, do you have belief in what you're trying to execute? And Derwin sets the tone on defense. I'd argue he's, one of the best in the NFL at establishing culture on the defensive side of the ball and having guys wanting to follow him. And as is Justin. I mean, you go out on the field with Justin, you're like, we're going to score, and it might be me that ends up getting the ball and I'm going to score.
This guy's been here for 2 years.
Yeah. So to me, and then, I think they've established, I think there's a difference between culture and identity. Right. So maybe they're talking about identity. It's possible. I don't know. But, to have Lombardi back, to put together a top 5 offense last year, to have Justin be, sort of floating around in the periphery of the MVP conversation, in his second year and throwing for 5,000 yards and 30 plus touchdowns and that I think it's identity that maybe they're trying to allude to. Denver has the no-fly zone, and that secondary is held. They keep drafting defensive backs. They keep drafting pass rushers. Like that I get. So that, I guess that part of it I understand. But I feel like, the defensive identity can be, can be shown and defined this year because of a year in the system. Some players were not comfortable in it last year. The free agents they brought in, I don't think that's necessarily culture. I think that's identity. Do you believe in what you're doing? Are you comfortable in what you're doing and being asked to execute? And so I think that's gonna take a big step this year.
Yeah, it's a great point too.
And by the way, of all the teams, like I would say it's the Chiefs that would have the ultimate culture and identity, of any of the teams in the AFC West. It's not the Broncos. It's the Chiefs that have the, hey man, congratulations. We're down 14. We're going to win by 7. Like that's the Chiefs, culture and identity. And it's as good as any in the NFL.
Yeah. Broncos starting from scratch with a new coach and a new quarterback. I mean, I know that they have a lot of pieces and you got to put it together, but same with the Raiders, brand new coach, brand new culture.
100%. And by the way, Russell Wilson is great and celebrated as he is by some, polarizing. Heard enough stories from players in Seattle that did not like him, that just were not, that thought it was, not genuine. That, that defensive side of the ball was not crazy about Russell in Seattle. So be a little careful about, hey, this is a great culture. I don't know, sometimes, especially when the identity of the Broncos is defense, we'll see. It's very similar. We'll see how that goes over.
Yeah, that's a great point. Connor, this is a good question too. At this point, what's going to be seen as a failure for the season or really a success? Should it be Super Bowl or bust this year? I would argue going from 9-8 to maybe 11-12 wins and making noise in the AFC, a loaded AFC with Buffalo and Cincinnati and the Chiefs and the Colts and the Patriots. And I'm missing 3 or 4 other teams. Making noise, maybe winning a game or two in the AFC playoffs, I think would be a huge step in the right direction in getting to a Super Bowl.
Yeah, to me, it's less wins and advancement in the playoffs that I would allude to for success. And it's more, we were concerned about the offense last year. Hey, we got a whole new, now this is Justin's 5th new offense in 5 years. What are we doing to this kid? Let's please not ruin the great rookie season we had. Well, he got better. The offense was better. So to put together, the offensive line was brutal his rookie year, and yet he was able to overcome the worst pressure numbers in the NFL to produce the best pressure passing numbers that we've seen in decades. So that was like the goal for when I think we were asked the same question on the pod last year. I was like, hey man, let's see this offensive line gets fixed. Let's see Justin, pass on time and not having to deal with it under pressure all the time, and whether or not they can take the next step. So for me, successful. Look, wins are weird. Wins and losses are weird in this league. Injuries are a big part. Attrition's a big part. Teams and players that take huge leaps from year to year and create much better teams than you had anticipated, that can lead to losses. Or guys falling off because they're getting old can lead to wins. So it's less about that. So for me, like a successful season is offense stays where it was. Top 5 offense. Justin Herbert is in the MVP conversation. 2 1,000-yard receivers. Austin Eckler is sniffing 1,500, 1,700. That's successful to me. The defense taking the jump and joining the offense as an elite unit, with all this talent they have, with all the money they've spent, with the belief and knowing that Brandon Staley is an exceptional defensive coordinator because he's done it on multiple occasions. Let's see that defense show up. And then may the wins and losses fall where they do, because, if the defense is ready to take that jump, that's a successful year to me.
Yeah. Then they'll be in the playoffs, because I do think, you got to make the playoffs, right? With this talent on both sides of the football. I think that next step for Justin, especially in year 3, getting to the postseason and then let the chips fall, because there's a lot of good teams, but I think Justin can score with anybody, and hopefully this revamped defense can stop a lot of offenses.
Yeah, no doubt. I just think back to last year. the Colts go down to Jacksonville and get whooped, and they don't make the playoffs, and they have just so many weird games that year. The overtime loss to the Titans, in the Colts defensively. And I know Carson Wentz did not have a terrible year for whatever reason. He was just a culture, was a bad culture fit for him. But it was 27-7. I think he had 27 TDs and 7 picks. There was weird. Numbers. Yeah, there were weird, COVID situations with him, his unwillingness to get vaxxed, missing games there, players getting pissed off at him for that. But I just bring it up because that's just how weird wins and losses are. The Steelers had no business being in the playoffs, but they had a weird tie and they had a couple odd wins. And so they sneak in, but I don't think by any stretch they would say, hey, it was a successful year, we made the postseason. No, they got destroyed in the first round of the playoffs and they did not have a good year. So that to me is why I just always sort of hesitate to do is it divisional round? Is it championship round? Is it a Super Bowl? I don't know. I just want to see the team look good. I want to see the units play well.
Yeah. And also tell me who's healthy in December, right? Who's healthy and who's rolling. Last question, Money. I've been a Chargers fan my whole life. It doesn't seem like there's been this much energy surrounding the organization since the LT Gates era. Do you guys feel like this is our year? Does this feel different to you? Our year, we don't know, right? But it does kind of feel different, right?
This is the most sizzle I've felt since I've been working with the Chargers, so going back to their first year here, in 2017, right? 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. Yeah. 2017. This is easily the most sizzle that I felt, and the most hype I felt surrounding them, even following the year, that they went 12-4 and won a wild card game in Baltimore. That following year, it just didn't feel the same. It was like, man, that was a lot of close games they won in weird fashion. And, so this feels different. This feels like on paper, this is one of the best rosters in the league. The offense has performed as one of the best units in the league. And if I keep repeating myself, if the defense can match, you feel really good about what this team can do. But it's a stacked conference. It's a stacked division. It is not going to be easy.
It will not be easy, but that's kind of what we laid out at the top. Is this defense is completely different, and I think that's a good thing when you talk about the players that they've brought in, the deficiencies they had stopping the run, and one other player I want to talk about that we talked a little bit about with Dane, but I think is going to make a really big difference this year is Isiah Spiller. I really think Isiah Spiller, in terms of controlling the clock, another weapon out of the backfield who can catch the ball for Justin, and somebody who can consistently spell Austin Eckler and let Austin be Austin, keep him as fresh as possible throughout the course of a 17-game season. We said it a few weeks ago that 2018 class with Derwin and Justin Jackson and Uchenna, that draft class was a large reason why they got to the playoffs and they won a game. And I just feel like, guys like JT Woods and perhaps Isiah Spiller could be
and Zion Johnson.
And well, of course, it's Zion Johnson, exactly. A plug and play guy. It's like we've already assumed he's the plug and play guard for the next 10 years. But I really feel like this draft class is going to contribute.
Yeah, they're going to have to, especially Zion, who's been drafted to be the starting right guard, and it looks like, and, and talking to everybody around the team, he's as advertised, mature, ready to go, ready. Whatever you throw at him, he's going to be able to absorb it. He's a real smart guy. And someone that, has proven it. Now he's got to slip from left to right. And that's going to take a second, as he said, just to kind of get a little more comfortable and mirroring your footwork and stuff. But outside of that, I'm hopeful. We've been saying it. We said it last year with Roundtree. We said it the year before with Josh Kelly. So I'm hopeful that Spiller is that guy, or one of those other two, or for whatever reason, if it clicks for Josh or Larry, as long as one of those three or two of those three are ready to take some of the load off Austin, that's going to be a huge win for the Chargers. Because like you said, Austin gets beat up because of all the contact he's willing to take and how strong he is pound for pound with never going down on first hit. He ends up getting worn out and misses a couple games here or there. So to be able to drop his snap count, by 25% would be huge for this team to keep him fresh for all 17 and the playoffs.
Yeah, we talked about the DB competition at training camp and preseason, the running back competition as well. Seeing Spiller and Roundtree and Kelly
probably not going to carry four, so it's going to be
probably not.
It's going to be interesting.
All right, brother. That's it. May 19th. We still got a ton to talk about, huh?
Yeah, exactly. Well, 2 weeks we'll be talking about training camp, right? So, or whatever it is, or our first
mini
OTAs,
camp. First mini camp.
Exactly.
Yeah. All right, that'll do it for us. Always love doing this with you, man. And I will see you next Thursday. For Bounty, I'm Chris. This is Charged Weekly.